Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipster podcast. This is your host, Jamil Hassan, the Crypto Hipster, where I interview founders, entrepreneurs, executives, thought leaders, amazing people all over the world of crypto and blockchain. And today I have another amazing guest. He is the senior product manager at Sumsub. His name is Emeka Mgbenu. Emeka, welcome to the show today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I've watched a few episodes before this, so it's always a very enlightening conversation that you have with your guests.
I'm looking forward to speaking with you today. This is going to be wonderful. Um,
Yeah.
let's kick things off. I'll ask you first. What is your background, and is it a logical background for what you're doing now?
Definitely, I would say. So my background is currently in product management, but more specifically in the fintech space. I've been doing this for 5 to 6 years now, and that experience has spanned across banking, lending, savings, crypto, and finally compliance. So it is definitely the problems I was solving before in terms of building these solutions and fighting fraud. It's all full circle moments to what I do now at Sumsub, where we're at the forefront of fighting fraud, keeping companies safe, just ensuring that they stay compliant, they get compliant and remain compliant. As things change in this very fast-paced society or industry that we find ourselves in.
Awesome, awesome. So, I want to find out, what SumSub is all about, including your vision and mission as a company, and then what yours is in your role.
Mm, yeah. So Sumsub on its own, just again, just a brief overview. We are a full cycle verification platform, and the goal is to secure the whole user journey with KYC, which is know your customer, KYB, transaction monitoring, fraud prevention, and travel rule. We One of the core things that we do is we use AI to fight AI fraud. So things like deep fakes and fake documents. We have systems in place that are able to detect this, flag this, and for the companies that we work with, stop these fake people from getting into the door. We've been around for 8+ years now, and we have over 2,500 clients across a number of fields. Predominantly fintech, crypto, but then also across like transportation, e-commerce, and most interestingly, gaming industries. So that is who we are in terms of what we do. We've transitioned. So we first launched as a KYC provider, and we've just evolved with the market, I would say. And now we do full cycle verification and do things like transaction monitoring as well. I think one thing that stands out in a way is the products that we build make it very user centric, or make it very easy for customers to onboard users in the shortest amount of time, and not just onboard users but also onboard risky users in some cases, and not really like exclude anyone from the process. So that is kind of a backstory of who we are in terms of as a product and whatnot. In terms of our vision, I think this is really important because we're focused not just on providing the technology to do a lot of these fancy things, but also we want to move the needle significantly in terms of even things like regulation. So for context, in the last year, we have had a report that's been used to create regulation in Mexico and Singapore. So that is, I think, on our end, a very big vision for us. It's to go beyond building these fantastic solutions, and push the needle. We still want to build the solutions, but it is very, and we still do this and do excellently well at it, but it is very dynamic, I would say. So while we're building these solutions, we are making it as easy to use as possible, and then we're also making it as customizable as possible. Because again, we cover multiple regions, we process different type of documents, we handle different scenarios, and the goal is you have this one solution that does everything for you as a business. So obviously your overhead costs are lower, the process is similar, it's a lot easier to do, and so on and so forth. So that is the goal. And yeah, that's how that's why we wake up every day and we're eager to come to work.
Awesome. So you said something. You said use AI to combat AI fraud. You know, a lot of people are scared about AI fraud and think there's no way to combat it. So how do you do that? How do you use AI to combat AI?
I mean, so for starters, if we think about like what AI is based on, AI is based on data models, and so lots of training has gone into place, and there are all these documentations and all this knowledge repository stored. Now, if we take something like deepfake, detecting deepfake injections, for example, that have been created with AI, there's a couple of data points that you can take from a video, in terms of like, is there a mask, are the backgrounds consistent? And these have been, again, these are patterns that we've seen over and over again. Same thing for a document, are the edges blurred? Has there been some form of graphic editing software used in the metadata? Don't want to get too technical, but those are scenarios, or those are like a few data points that we look out for. And then there are other things as well. The fact that we've been doing this for so long means we also have our own repository of fraudulent attempts, fake documents, fake people, impersonations, and so on and so forth. So all this data combined is a solid weapon, and then you just have to build, infrastructure on top of that, that sees these patterns and checks them and solves it. That is one way we can spend the next 20 minutes talking about, because fraud is broad. But well, I'll keep it at that for now.
Okay, sounds good. Because yeah, we could. I might bring you back to talk about AI specifically for a half hour or so, but I want to get into something else right now. Get into the travel rule.
Definitely.
What is the travel rule all about, and why is it challenging for users and virtual asset service providers to keep up with all the intricacies? Because it seems like there are a lot of details flying around out there.
Yeah. So to answer this, I would go back to some like historical context. So the travel rule was birthed out of something called Recommendation 16 by the FATF, which is the Financial Action Task Force. This is a global anti-money laundering watchdog that typically gives these directions and recommendations, and then regional jurisdictions and regional regulators kind of take from that big body of work and craft their own local laws. In essence, what it is a way for companies to confirm and screen counterparty data. Now, unlike traditional institutions where you always know who you're sending to, crypto is pretty much anonymous. A wallet address is a string of numbers, and there's no way to know who it belongs to. Now, travel rule specifically affects, again, licensed exchanges. So if you have a license in a jurisdiction, the regulators want to be sure that, first of all, who you're sending funds to on behalf of your customers, and who your customers are receiving funds from, and you're screening these people to ensure that they are not risky. You're also screening the funds to ensure that they are not from, darknet marketplaces or all these sort of, risky stolen assets. And if you are finding things and flagging them, you are making the necessary reports to the regulators. So that is the goal. It's information exchange, but it's also checking this information thoroughly, like identifying who is behind the information, checking source of funds, and so on and so forth. In terms of the second part of your question, like why is it difficult? It's a couple reasons. First of all, this is a pretty recent regulation, if you think about it. I mean, while the FATF regulation was made like in 2016, it has taken time for different regions to implement this across board. So the UK implemented theirs in 2023. MiCA is coming into effect for the EU in 2025, and there have been different jurisdictions and different kind of like paces. So what that does is it creates a scenario where, and we call it the sunrise issue, where VASPs are not on the same page in terms of communication, in terms of how they interact with certain things. And if we think about it, we have 94 jurisdictions, and we have 65 VASPs, so 65 jurisdictions who have passed travel rule legislation. Now, passing the legislation is different from when the legislation kicks into effect. So you can pass legislation and you have a 1 year, 2 year grandfathering period for before VASPs comply, for example. And when I say VASPs, I mean this is the legal term for virtual asset service providers. This can be your exchanges, your on-ramp and off-ramps, your payment providers, basically anybody who is licensed and touches crypto. is technically a VASP, or marketplaces and so on and so forth. So that is one challenge where we see, which is the sunrise issue again, because it creates a lot of operational overhead. And a lot of times when you drill down to the regional legislations, there can be gaps in terms of how to deal with certain scenarios. There can be different approaches. So a regulator in the UK might have a different set of requirements, and a regulator in UAE has a different set of requirements. So there is confusion or for how VASPs would, how much data they can send, for example, from one jurisdiction to another, or what checks they have to do, and how extensive it is. Now, where there is uncertainty, it definitely causes a scenario where VASPs are scared to lose business, and it's very uncomfortable at the top. So that is one of the challenge. Another challenge is, and this is super important, is a lack of interoperability. So for context, and with all things crypto, when these rules were created, a lot of people went off and did their own things. So a lot of people built their own protocols. So now we have 4, 5, 6, 7 different travel protocols who are all built differently, who are all built with different infrastructure, and who can talk to each other. So what that means is, if you're a VASP and you use protocol A, it's highly unlikely you can talk to a VASP who uses protocol B, because they are on a different network. They can't communicate with each other. And again, just to piggyback on Sumsub as well, because this is a problem that we're tackling head on in terms of making travel interoperable. I think our goal is to build the Swift system of the crypto network, where regardless of the protocol that you're connected to, you can communicate with other protocols. So a VASP in the UK can communicate to a VASP in Japan on different protocols entirely. We've done this by doing integrations with GTR, Code, Signal. These are all protocols, by the way, and we could keep on adding more as time goes on. So I didn't want just to talk about the problems without talking about a bit of the solution. So hopefully this helps.
I have a practical question now.
Sure.
Say you said, and I want to get into the interoperability, but from a traveler, say I
Mm-hmm.
want to leave the US and come to, a European country, say Netherlands or Switzerland or whatever, and I'm flying across the ocean and I have a crypto wallet on my iPhone, and that crypto
Mm-hmm.
wallet has $10,000 worth of crypto in it, you know, um, and I don't declare it, or what do I need to do as a traveler on the plane? Do I have to declare the crypto I have in my wallet? Do I have to disclose that, or can I still be anonymous? And if I'm not, have all this to disclose it, can I get into trouble because I didn't?
Yeah, so it definitely depends on the type of wallet. In this case, I would limit it to hosted wallets. So what that means is, let's assume you have a wallet on an exchange like, let's say Binance or Coinbase. If you're leaving jurisdictions, if you're traveling, there's no need to declare these assets. What happens is your assets are domiciled with a legal entity in a particular region. So even if you travel from the UK to Netherlands, your funds are domiciled with the Binance or Coinbase UK entity, for example. So it doesn't necessarily, when we say travel in the context of travel rule, we mean the information about the transaction traveling across, and not necessarily the owner of the wallet address or the owner of the cryptocurrency traveling. So you would not have to declare your crypto. However, certain cryptocurrency companies might put in real guards in place to prevent you from accessing their services in other regions. So maybe you use a VPN, you get blocked, or you can't open the apps in the UK or in the US, depending. But whenever you come back to your home country, your funds do not travel with you. Your funds are domiciled with the legal entity where you registered them. So it's a different conversation entirely if you are now sending those funds from a UK legal entity, VASP, to, let's say, an entity in Netherlands, for example. Let's say you relocated permanently, not like you're on vacation or anything.
Got it. But like a trust wallet.
Yes, with unhosted wallets, which is like Trust wallets, MetaMasks, you typically don't have to do anything. Those are very jurisdiction independent, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So interoperability is one knowledge gap, right? And you're working
Mhm.
to that and to make a solution for that. But I'm sure there are other knowledge gaps. What are they? And then I want to get into your course after we talk about what those knowledge gaps are.
Yeah. So aside interoperability, I think the main knowledge gap is really just around the like what this is and why it's important. I think for context on the surface, the name is very somewhat deceitful. I've had people walk up to me at conferences, asking about, does this is this a travel, when we say travel role, crypto travel role, they're asking, is this a crypto experience company that can allow me book flights? So first of all, the name is quite misleading, because again, it's a pretty new regulation that isn't quite mainstream. So the first knowledge gap is actually breaking down and understanding what the concept is, educating people on what the concept is, why it's important, or what are the implications for not, doing X, Y, Z, for not meeting these requirements. So that's the first step. New concept, we have to educate, 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 so it becomes, very mainstream at the back of our minds. Now, a second challenge will definitely be the interoperability issue, which is what we've raised in the past about, we've talked about it quite a bit about there being so many different protocols that don't talk to themselves, and VASPs are kind of left holding the bag in terms of, what do they do next. And then the third thing I would definitely say would be, in a lot of regulations, there is something that is called like a risk-based approach, which is basically when your regulators tell you, here you have a blank check, try to do everything possible to ensure that you are safe. We're not going to tell you exactly what to do, but based on these scenarios, do everything within your best interest to, you know, prevent fraud, so to speak. Now, a risk-based approach is very broad, and sometimes VASPs need help in terms of, first of all, defining what a threshold is, or what countries they are willing to work with in terms of, where the VASPs are domiciled, or which type of users should they allow to send transactions above a certain amount. So it is this extreme customized risk approach, that sometimes gets muddied up and is very confusing. In the real, in typical compliance, it's always a red, stop, green, go. If there's XYZ signals, stop. If there's ABC signals, go. But with travel rule, it is very complex. There's so many things you have to consider. The risks of the VASPs themselves. Is a VASP risky? Have they been in the news for, fraud or anti-money, or, data privacy concerns? Is the user itself risky? Did they register from a country that you're not quite sure of? Is the amount in question suspicious? Based on the user's historical transaction, is this an anomaly? Is this normal? So there's lots of different scenarios that, VASPs have to do to ensure that they are safe. And again, this is a problem, and this is also somewhere where Sumsub is also focused on in terms of solving this for VASPs by giving them the tools to, first of all, define what these very complex parameters are, and then automate the process over time. Yeah, we will stick with three for now. I think that should be sufficient.
Oh, it is. It is. So I want to get into your course. I haven't
Mhm.
seen until now a travel rule course, and it looks pretty thorough. And a lot of people over the years have told me they've made a class, and this is great. I'm like, I'm looking at your course, and I'm like, to me, it looks like a must take. You know, why must people? Like, I think it is. Why must people
Mhm.
take your course, and why is it important for them in their careers going forward in this crypto industry?
Yeah, so the first thing about like why the course is super important is, I think for us as Sumsub, and when I introduced Sumsub, I talked about the fact that, we're always trying to go, just beyond providing tech solutions. We're trying to make a dent in the space, educationally, legally, and so on and so forth. So this is one of our many attempts to, increase the knowledge gap, to reduce the knowledge gap, I mean, to expand the horizon, to contribute. It's a free course, by the way. So this is, fantastic addition to a space where there aren't a lot of resources, or there's still a lot of ambiguity around the course. So around the concept. So that's the first step. That's why people should take the course. It's for everyone from a beginner who has never heard about this, like a newbie compliance officer, to your MLROs and your CEOs. It breaks it down significantly well. It gives a lot of context, historical context as to why this is important, how it was important, and so on and so forth. So that's the first bit. The second part of why the course is super important is that we don't just travel rule is complex in a way that it has been implemented in different ways in different jurisdictions. So the UAE has implemented it differently, Japan differently, UK differently. The course summarizes and gives a bird eye view of all these different jurisdictions. Again, some of the knowledge in the course has come from our own experience as Sumsub, working with crypto clients for years. So we work with crypto clients who are, global, who have clients in all these different countries, who have sub entities. So we have a lot of context, and we've put that context into the course in terms of this is how travel rule works in XYZ regions. So it is not a pigeonholed course. It is a course that gives you a global reach, and educates better. The third thing, then this is super duper important, is we provide guidance and practical insights from lawyers, tech people like myself, and even players who are already implementing travel rule. So in the course, we have people from exchanges who talk about how they implemented it, the challenges that they faced. We have lawyers give a legal opinion. We have, I'm on the course as well, so I'm talking about the technical side, how to handle scenarios, and so on and so forth. It is first-hand experience. It is not theoretical. That is also very important as well. And I think the last thing is just based on the last thing on why the course is super important and why people should take it is there's also a strategic element in the course as well. So while we're showing you the practicals, while we're talking about what to do, what happens, there's a strategy, in terms of, as a VASP, while travel rule is important, you have to go one step further. You have to be looking at the full picture. You have to understand your user journey end to end in order to prevent fraud. So we give, again, a couple of strategies around how you can do travel rule, but also how, as a VASP, you can, fight fraud. You can be fraud proof in a way, and you can keep on modifying and changing and adapting as things change. Yeah.
That sounds great. So I'm thinking I was going to ask you, trying to figure out how to ask you this because I want to ask you about best practices, but
Mhm.
I don't want you to give me the cliff notes because I want people to take your class, including me. I'm going
Mhm.
to because it seems really important to do. So from a vast perspective, what's some of the best ways that they can deal, like they can look at their user journey and then look at their legislator or regulator side to come up with the best approach for their business.
Mm. So one strategy I would say will be obviously having a comprehensive, bird's eye view of what you want to achieve as a VASP. Depending on the type of VASP that you are, this will be different. So you have to, as a VASP, you have to define your user personas. You have to understand your types of users. So the first step will definitely be look at your data as a VASP and understand your users, understand where they're coming from, understand their behavior, and so on and so forth. Data is gold, and this is one key way where VASPs can, that's the starting point, in terms of having as much data as possible about your customers and then using that to decide the type of customers that you have. So that's on the one hand. At Sumsub, we do this because we have a KYC, service. So when a customer is typically onboarding with us, depending on the customer settings, we have an idea of who he is, his ID card details, how old he is, sometimes how much he earns, where did he log in first from, all these data points, we'll call them like biometric data points, on one hand, that's super important, and then next, as the customer grows, there begins to be patterns. Now, 95% of fraud happens after the onboarding stage. So it's one thing to onboard a customer, but you cannot, just let the customer go. So we have something called, and this is a plug for another product, but it's something called like a dynamic risk scoring, where as a customer, grows, transacts on your platform, logs in, logs out, makes transfers, sends crypto across, he has a dynamic risk score. So if there are certain things that the customer does, then that score is changed. And what we're saying to so our client is, this customer might not, check him out, asking for more information. And there'll also be times when there is fraud committed and you have to block those users. So that is one example of how just understanding, first of all, getting that data, storing it, using it wisely, and then using it like dynamically can help VASP stay ahead and be super compliant in this space.
I think that's important because whenever I look at the compliance section of crypto news location, there's always issues with compliance. So that's good, and so with compliance, right? What do you think would be the best compliance efforts holistically across the crypto industry?
I think across the crypto industry, specifically, regulators have done a lot. This year has seen a lot of mainstream crypto adoption. We've seen a lot of rules come into place. We've seen a lot of institutional adoption, and that has brought kind of like a regulatory eye. Crypto is no longer the wild west as it was a couple of years ago. So on one hand, that is great, and that is a solid foundation. If we talk specifically of like travel rule and so on and so forth, some things that would help would definitely be, I want to say like consistency of data. And this can be consistency of data from a VASP attribution standpoint. For context, what the VASP attribution is the ability to identify a VASP behind a wallet address. So if you have an account with Binance, you have a wallet address. And there are ways to identify that this wallet address is owned by, let's say, Binance on your behalf. Currently, that process is done with blockchain analytics providers, but it is not always 100%. And if we think about travel rule, the first step to even communicating with a counterparty VASP is you have to know who you're communicating to. Again, in crypto, there are no central repositories, just like we have in banking, where you put an address in and you get a name back. We don't have that in crypto yet. That would be a good step in terms of making it a lot simpler for compliance officers. Somebody has to go build that. We're doing our bits here, but that will be super important as well. The next thing will definitely be education, and the education here will more be with regulators and policymakers, because the people who are making the laws need to understand the technology behind it, need to understand the limitations, and need to know and keep up with the trends. Some of this is happening in some jurisdictions with like sandboxes, and so on and so forth, but it needs to be deeper. There needs to be more. It needs to be a conscious effort by both sides to handshake and share information and collaborate. So that is the second thing I would say that's super important. The third thing will be interoperability. And we've talked about this as well. Just making sure that everyone can communicate with each other, regardless of where they are, regardless of the jurisdiction that they're registered in, regardless of the type of VASP that they are. There needs to be that interoperability issue being solved. And when we look at these, again, these are a few suggestions. There's also like counterparty due diligence. When we say due diligence, what we mean is the ability to understand who owns a VASP, who are the beneficial owners of that company, where are they registered, are they exposed, are they politically exposed people. Now you can get that data from a variety of ways, but the issue will be recency of that data as well. How recent is the data? Has ownership structure changed? And so on and so forth. So these are some of the, I want to say, like, challenges. These are some of the things that make it difficult, that I think we need to improve. But ultimately, we have to achieve a balance between robust regulation and innovation and moving fast.
Got it. That sounds good to me. Um, you you said, I forget who I spoke with. It was a few podcasts ago about that. That easy to use for a customer, not using a wallet address, but using just a
Mhm.
name. There is a company that. So, I just can't recall the name of the company, but they
Yeah.
have started on that. So,
Mhm.
so that's good. So, awesome. So really, I really enjoyed speaking with you. I want to bring you back in probably the winter to talk about AI some more. This has been a great conversation. But how can people? I have one last question. So thank you very much for your time. So my last question is this: is how can people find out more information about you, about Sumsub? How can they take your course because they should? Um,
Mhm.
how can they do that?
Yeah, so our course is available on sumsub.com, sumsub.com. We have courses around travel rule, and we also have other courses around KYC and transaction monitoring. So that is the first step. To reach us. The course is free, so please sign up. Once you're done, you will get a certificate to show that you've completed the course, and you would learn a lot. In terms of myself, you can reach me on LinkedIn, Emeka, and I think one thing to add as well for Sumsub is we are always publishing reports. We're always contributing, and we, we've seen, and we actually have a report coming up in early 2025, which will be a crypto report where we would analyze global verification and digital fraud, as well as share some of these tips on how VASPs can build better onboarding flows, how they can protect themselves from scams, how they can stay compliant. We publish these reports typically every year. So we have one coming out 2025. We did have one coming out 2024 as well. So these are the resources, I would say, that people who want to be abreast in the space can do. So following Sumsub on our social media platforms, so that you are first in line for getting these details and these reports when we drop them, and then also like passing the courses and all whatnot. And then if there are any VASPs who want to do business with us as well, you can always book a demo with us via our website as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much. This was very nice.